Ladies and gentlemen, the conference room to the rear of us is open. If you can't find a seat, we have a direct live feed in there, so you can observe, or you can stand there. We weren't anticipating such a large crowd. Maybe we should have. Let them know. Okay, good evening everyone. It's 7 o'clock. It's approached the commencement hour, so can I welcome you all this evening to tonight's planning meeting. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you've got mobile phones, can you please switch them on or put them on silent, please? You're welcome to stay for the duration of the meeting or leave after your item has been considered. And if you are leaving, please do so quietly so we can proceed with the rest of tonight's agenda. There's no direct dialogue between the gallery and councillors. Only those who have listed to speak will present, either as an objector or a presenter. What we'll do, we'll have officers present each item this evening. We'll hear from objectors or applicants if they're requested to speak, and questions will come from councillors to our officers for answers. Okay, having said that, we'll commence tonight's meeting. The membership is as listed. Do we have any apologies tonight, councillors?
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Williams, an apology this evening. Councillor Walsh has informed me that he's running late, so we can note that. Item 3 for consideration, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest from councillors?
No, Mr.
There's none. Thank you, councillors. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of the previous planning committee meeting. Moved Councillor McCarthy, seconded Councillor Setis. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item is consideration of reports, commencing with 5.1, application for planning permit for 72A Station Street, Fairfield. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application is for a 6-storey mixed-use development. It includes 20 dwellings and a 313 square metre ground floor retail sites in 3 proposed occupancies. The unusual element of this application, Mr. Mayor, is it's a complete waiver of parking, and that's why you find quite detailed commentary on the report explaining how that all works. And how that's being assessed. And this is
sorry, Darren, sorry. If you're coming inside, you need to actually be away from the doorway, so it's got to be a clear thoroughfare. Sorry, if there's not enough room, you can actually watch it from the rear room behind us, okay? Just for H&S reasons. Thanks, Darren, apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is largely the reason why the report before you is so detailed and thorough. Because it is unusual for a development style to not provide parking on site, and that's why there's quite a deal of commentary and explanation about why that's still justifiable in this particular case. Part of the merit council needs to consider with this planning application is also unusual. The development bill consideration differs from the conventional market model. You simply can't be a person, the way information is presented with this application, that walks off the street and says, oh, I want this. And as is explained in this report and in the supporting information that was advertised with this application, buying into this development and buying the way of life, it's a choice of the value set that you've got to represent and demonstrate to be able to make a purchase in this development. That element that sets this development apart from many others that are considered by this committee. In reviews and way of life noted is well articulated in the officer's report. It promotes an affordable way of living, and it's one where private car ownership would be at odds with that way of living. It's a lifestyle that promotes a low energy consumption value. So inherently this future owners are discouraged from owning private cars, and there's a lot in the report that explains how that works. There are payments such to the economic or the owners corporation to fund the green travel and share car facilities that will be available for the proposed development. So many of the, as the officer's report contends, there's many of those promoted in this development are aligned with many things this council promotes and so the 20 dwellings proposed include 4 3-bedroom dwellings. There are 12 2-bedroom units and 4 single-bedroom dwellings. As explained in the storage is provided for up to 50 bikes, which is much higher than the traditional application we would consider through the committee. The application has been advertised, Mr Mayor. There have been 42 objections received, in addition to 202 written letters of support. That's another unusual element of the application. The grounds for objection in the officer's report, again, is quite a bit detailed on through around this pages 16 to 22 of the officer's report takes you through the objections and the officer's assessment of the validity of those objections. Obviously, one of the key issues is car parking, and as I mentioned earlier, that's why the report is focused on that issue and addressing the concerns raised by our community. Certainly at an officer level, it's understandable that an application of this nature would be quite complex to get your head around. It's important to note too there are conditions of approval which seek to address some of the concerns that have been raised in the community and to provide a high level of comfort. And I suppose to support the authenticity of this application in terms of the way life promotes, and this goes with promotes in terms of private car ownership use. One of the weaknesses of the application, the officer identified in the application, when it looks at some of the other applications that we've proposed and approved in the City of Auckland, is in those locations there's a much higher degree of parking restrictions. We have some unrestricted parking that is accessible to the site. Also, method to the site there isn't a immediate parking system in place. So that's one of the context considerations that is highlighted, and that's why condition 9 is the recommendation of the officer's report. To overcome that, I suppose, to prove up the authenticity of what the applicant is saying about this application, to allow a review process to occur 12 months after the building is occupied, to really assess and test if indeed there are impacts on this community in terms of residents in this development of the cars. There is some commentary in the report, page 43, that explains that mentioned Mr Mayor. Thank you for bearing with that long description, Mr Mayor. It's an unusual application. I think the assessment of the officer is thorough, and although there are pioneering elements of this type of proposal for Darabin, it's not something new for Melbourne, and probably not something new in the future. The application is recommended for support, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Darren. We'll now go over to speakers. I understand there's an applicant who's asked to speak, Darren, also an objector. So if we have the applicant.
James Lee of 6 Degrees Architecture, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, James. If you could take the seat at the front table here, please. If you can speak into the microphone, you have 5 minutes. You can circulate those, certainly. The officer here will take those. And when you commence, you'll have 5 minutes on the screen in front of you here. Thanks, James. 5 minutes.
Look, thank you first of all, Mr. for letting me speak today. I want to talk about 3 key issues. Firstly, the positive built form. Secondly, transport and parking, and thirdly, affordability. Looking at positive built form, 72 Station Street was purchased. One of the reasons was its direct access to multiple forms of public transport, existing social infrastructure, and an existing plan. So the existing planning permit, which you can see on page 3, is for an office building. It delivers a pretty poor outcome as we see it, and instead they have a dispensation of the condition for the car park. We propose in our submission, in our proposal, a 5-storey or ground plus 4-storey plus warming on top and a roof deck on top building, which offers a ground plane that scales pedestrians, offers an active streetscape, and passive surveillance for precinct for the station. Some of the other key urban forms, key positive form outcomes. 6 Degrees generally pursues high sustainability standards in our work, so any project we do will pursue high sustainability standards. low or zero volatile organic compounds in materials, waste stream management throughout the building process, zero fossil fuels, 100% renewable energy generating operations, and systems like rooftop solar systems. Rainwater reuse, integrated sustainable transport, including zero car parking, car share vehicles, and 46 secure bicycle parks. So a lot of work has gone into and efforts going to ensure the project will not cause traffic-related issues in the surrounding neighbourhood. So from the very outset, Nightingale 2 is proposed to be a car-free development designed for people who explicitly said they want to live without owning a car. Management strategies implemented have been implemented to encourage and enable zero car ownership. And these include selecting a site with excellent public transport, access to public transport, cycling and local shops, obtaining commitment on multiple occasions from those who are experienced in purchasing into Nightingale 2, providing 46 secure bicycle parks and proposing a car share vehicle out the front of the car, out front of the building. As well as that, there's an extensive green travel plan. It includes $500 per bed with sustainable transport and corporation fees restricted for the use of microcredit, car share use and bicycle services. Our approach goes, as we see it, above and beyond the planning scan. We are confident that management strategies put in place will result in minimal any impact on our community relations to town parking. But to further strengthen our assertions, we've agreed with the full council decision to require not insignificant $35,000 security bond to be levied against the development to manage any unlikely traffic impacts on the project. It should also be thought or remembered that car ownership is a fast-changing landscape based not only on age demographics but also on personal preference, sustainability and affordability. Affordability is a key issue in Nightingale projects. Without direct marketing or advertising, over 1,000 people have registered their interest in the triple bottom line Nightingale model apartments. This demand is a clear indication that people are unhappy with the current housing stock provided by developers, or not all of it, but much of it. Many of these prospective residents will be in attendance at the Crown Community meeting shown support. There's a lot of money is saved essentially in the Nightingale model projects. Prices are kept as low as possible, or most of them not possible by removing various things such as sales and marketing costs, display streets and real estate agents, space for car parking in appropriate locations, individual laundries, which instead we have shared laundries on the rooftop, which is actually have a formal way to facilitate the community.
30 seconds.
Second, bathrooms, staffing and investors as well. Whatever savings that are made go into either improving the amenity of the buildings or increasing the cost of the apartment. Let's just finish up. In finishing, the site is perfectly located for an Nightingale project, and we believe allows the development of the building that council will be able to use in the town block. We're indicating what they expect from other developers. As Nightingale architects, we are seeking to challenge the status quo.
Thank you, James. Time.
Provide better, more affordable development.
You can resume your seat in the gallery. Thank you very much. Darren, we have an objector asking to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Constantinopolis is registered as an objector this week.
Thank you. Thank you, Connie. If you can just take the seat at the front there, you've got 5 minutes.
Mayor, councillors, I reside at 4A Gilly Street, Fairfield, and I'll speak on behalf of 2 business owners. They are on Salt Restaurant, 72 Station Street, and the Blooming Lister at 25 Railway Place, Fairfield. Both of these businesses are directly opposite proposed development. I also speak on behalf of the residents at 2A, 20, 36, 26, 4, 31 and 33 Gilly Street, Fairfield. Also wish to make a note that of the 200 support documents in place to support this development, I note there is a pro forma on the website of the development, and I ask that these all be struck out. Should a building permit at 72A Station Street be granted, it will have enormous short-term ramifications for the 2 businesses directly opposite the building, in terms of reduction in parking, noise and dust. Both businesses offer a sidewalk service as part of their business. By the architect's own admission, the building at 72A Station Street will permanently impact on 25 Railway Place, as it will not allow a view of the sunrise and vista and sunrays to fall on the sidewalk and at this cafe until around midday. This feature and phenomenon is currently enjoyed by the patrons of this cafe. Councillors, there are enormous parking problems in Railway Place and Gilly Street. You've heard it before. 62 and 64 Station Street, Fairfield, is 120 metres from the station. The proposed Greenwich Fairfield project, the old RSL site in Railway Place, is 80 metres from the station. Both these builds provide significant car parking spaces for their residents and visitors. As a community, we appreciate the 7.5-star energy rating of the proposed building, the communal bike racks, the showers, the Indigenous street cleaning scheme, the commercial laundry, the fact that it's got no air conditioning. It does not assist in decreasing the traffic management problems of our neighbourhood. The project manager, by his own admission, cannot guarantee that property owners will not own a car. And it is understood that another significant development similar to this, there are a significant number of owners who do own cars and stated they wouldn't. Yes, they have a bond system in place, but for a few $100s, we all know we can transfer the car registration of any motor vehicle to a third party and still comply with ownership guidelines of this proposed bill. The project manager and architect both acknowledge places like Fairfield are the envy of those that reside in modern European cities. Let me venture something to you. My brother-in-law resides in cosmopolitan Madrid. He resides 150 metres from a metro railway station. The trains come every 4 minutes. He visits my mother-in-law who resides 100 metres from a metro railway station. On Sundays, he goes downstairs to his apartment car parking space. He packs his 2 kids, his wife in the car. On the way to my mother-in-law, he buys a cake on the way for dessert. There's no menu log. They don't do deliveries. He drops his family off at the basement of my mother-in-law's apartment and then proceeds to do up to 3 laps while he seeks to park his car. The proposal here, councillors, Mr Mayor, is just not practical for our neighbourhood. I ask that European nations and the cities have been doing this a lot longer than we have, and they still haven't got it right. I ask the council not grant a permit until the developers come up with a better traffic management strategy. A guarantee is given that it will not impose on the financial viability of the surrounding businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Con, if you can resume your seat in the gallery. Okay, questions from councillors to our officers. Are there any questions? Councillor McCarthy.
Just one question. The proposed $35,000 bond amount, is this the first time we've had this proposed in relation to a Darebin development? I don't remember seeing it in my time on council.
Darren?
It is, Mr Mayor. It's the first time a legal agreement has been required to assess the parking situation. There was a similar planning application near the Oxford housing development, just to the north in Preston, but not that's a relevant office use, not a legal use.
Thank you. Councillor Cetus.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. I'm a little bit curious, perhaps just a little bit of an explanation, a clarification. What is the difference between retail space and commercial space? Because it appears vague to describe what could be either or, the or being perhaps hospitality space.
Yes, the retail space can include, Mr Mayor, hospitality space, but the commercial space, that's available offices and also retail offices.
Specific use, in other words. Okay. Councillor Greco? Sorry. Thank you, Darren. Councillor Greco?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question in relation to the bond, just as a lead-off from Councillor McCarthy. I note that it's a 173 agreement that's been proposed, but I was just wondering what would happen in the event that the property is sold? Is the 173 agreement still binding on the new owners or not?
Mr. Mayor, the agreement and the planning permit runs with the land. So when a property is transferred, the obligations transfer with it, and the benefits of the planning permit also transfer with it.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question regarding the possibility of extending the no-car application to possible renters of and future occupiers of this. I understand owners might sign up to a no-car ownership, but does that extend to the rental agreement with future occupiers that are renters?
My understanding is yes, Mr. Mayor. But again, it's not something you can legally apply, and it's one of the reasons.
No, it's an aim.
Councillor Villela?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to the officer, in relation to visitor car parking, because that's been waived as well, and my understanding is that there's 4 were required on page 37. Would that be right? And there's a shortfall of 4.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the code falls through, which is similar to, as Mr. Lee said, the waiver of the previous applications for commercial offices.
But just, if I may, my question was, is there any rationale around visitor car parking? Because I understand that if you're an owner, you enter into a contract where you don't buy a car, you don't have a car, but you can't manage or you can't control any visitors. Would that be fair to say?
And this is where there's a balancing. We've got a clear objective for our planning scheme and for our business areas to promote business activity in the borough to the benefit of our business centre, and a waiver in an order of fixed spaces weighed up against the benefit of activating that space in the station and further to the business through the station's purpose seems a prominent and issue factor. And it's not in the scheme of things, particularly with our new retail and office and business sort of proposal in any of our new centres. It's not without precedent that council would offer waivers that even more generous than that for a particular proposal of this type.
Okay, Darren. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. This application places an enormous amount of responsibility on the applicant. With all due respect to the viability of the business, what happens if the business goes under? What's the ongoing viability of that scheme, and what responsibility will we carry as a council should this not succeed the way you plan to be?
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, is the question there about the business model?
No, I'm looking at any residual risks the council might carry if this project does not succeed the way you envisage.
Mr. Mayor, if I answer the question now, Councillor Lee might want to clarify. It's saying this property, for example, is sold or it doesn't go ahead, and someone says, I'm going to dispense with all the ideas I wish and do something different. I think we're in a situation in our planning applications we sign our form to say that on lodging an application, not presenting an application to you tonight based on a different merit than what we typically apply. So if the property is sold and value set behind this development, I think we're dealing with a futile permit there. Or a situation, the worst council would be able to undertake its process or an option of council.
Okay. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor McCarthy.
Just going back to the issues around managing the behaviour of potential renters in a future setting under this scenario. If I'm correct from Mr Rudd's comment, that's not something that can be conditioned as part of the planning permit, arrangements with future renters or lessees of properties. Can I just get clarity around that? Or whether there is a condition available to require the body corporate to enforce its own rules that currently would apply to actual tenant owners?
Darren, tell you that.
Sorry, it's a complicated one.
It is.
For council to a planning permit to advocate rules for an owners corporation.
Yep.
It's a good question, but again, I think we've got a monitoring element in the planning permit. I think it's about where, as a council, as a planning authority, we can best exercise our controlling authority. And I think what we're talking about here is a behaviour. And residents that might choose to own a car when the application can be presented as we're not going to own the car, trust us. Condition 9 says, okay, you need to be identical with that. So I think that's a condition there that's going to regulate owners, residents, tenants and their behaviour, and it provides a mechanism for council to come in and assess the parking situation. So if there's a belief or concern in the community about spaces being loaded by what they are previously, it gives us an opportunity to react. But again, if it becomes something different, we can go back to enforcement.
If I'm correct, and I just want to think, just following on from Mr. Budd's comments there, if I'm correct in understanding the application of condition 9, it would place the onus on the owner of the individual dwelling to ensure the maintenance of that commitment to no car ownership, which then would mean that the landlord in this context, if a property was to be rented out, would then carry that responsibility for their tenant, which means that puts then at risk their $35,000 bond. I'm just trying to work out what the mechanism is that exists in the system here that actually delivers that security that I think that is proposed by condition 9.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is talking about the behaviour of car ownership. If the people choose to own a car and the application has been presented to us as that may not be the case, 12 months after occupation, council can add the owner as a developer's cost, do a survey, support our security deposit, and then if it's found to have the case, we go through the usual process that we do when we consult our community around parking permit schemes, and the councillors know, Mr. Mayor, that any residents, that if you introduce a parking permit scheme in the area of Fairfield, any residents in Nottingham too would not be able to get a resident parking permit.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Villola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to the officer, just a point of clarification. On page 41, there's in relation to the parking issue, it talks about the commons. I think it's in Brunswick. Yeah. Now, am I correct in my reading of this that at VCAT it was deemed that there was some parking demand for the commons? However, in this case, it's zero parking requirement because of the unrestricted car parking outside. Is that right? Have I got that right?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So, but the tribunal did acknowledge that there was some demand for parking.
I think the level of 3 spaces is identified.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
Councillor Greco.
Just going back to condition number 9, which I think is one of the key conditions, can you just explain what happens after 36 months?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
What happens after 36 months?
Condition 9.
After 36 months, if there's no demonstrated increase in demand attributable to the development, the security deposit return.
Just as a follow-on question, if parking then becomes an issue, what recourse does the council have?
If you say after, Mr. Mayor said after 3 months?
Yep.
After 36 months? Yeah, it's there on council.
Councillor Lawrence.
Just one question. I've asked this to similar proposals in other cities. You've got this clause 9 which seeks to regulate car ownership. Why wouldn't the developers look at a covenant straight on the title?
Mr. Mayor, there's lots of conversations with the applicants
Darren. Councillor McCarthy.
Just following on from that question, is it within council's, well, planning committee's purview, if it saw fit to support the recommendation to extend that period from 36 months to a longer period? That sits at 3 years. Is it possible to look at a longer period, such as a 4 or 5 year period, for the holding of that bond?
Mr Mayor, the only danger then is that if the application is reviewed, it goes back to the nexus element, which is a critical planning law item you have to succeed item, becomes rescue, so or becomes harder to make a following.
So if I'm correct,
The longer you make it, the harder it becomes. Mr Mayor, to be quite frank, it's a bit of a stretch to get 3 years.
so if I'm correct in understanding, the 36 months, the 3 years is based on the premise that any effects that will be felt in terms of impact on local traffic will be felt within those 3 years from the date of completion of the project.
Mr Mayor, yes, that's agreed. That's a reasonable proposition for this place to remain.
Okay. If there's no further questions,
I'm willing to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
we have a recommendation as listed in the agenda. Councillor McCarthy has moved. Councillor Sidis has seconded. Councillor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, officers, for answering all those questions, and to the applicant and the objector for their presentations. I've looked at this in a lot of detail, and I'm sure other councillors have. It's a unique proposal. We have not seen anything like this in the city of Darebin, but our neighbours in Moreland have, and certainly in other cities around Australia and elsewhere overseas have had similar proposals. So in looking at my assessment of what's proposed here, and particularly condition 9, which, as I think has been illustrated, has not been applied in this context before, and I think is a bit of a test case for it. I'm confident in terms of the, I suppose, the safeguards that have been put in place and the context that's been provided. And I draw Planning Committee's attention to the fact that what we're looking at here is actually replacing an existing permit which was approved by this Planning Committee in 2011, if my recollection is correct, which allows for a 5-storey office building with the waiver of 40 car spots, with a residential development with an additional safeguard which is higher than the 5 storeys. It's at 5, and I think it also includes a terrace component as well, but a full waiver. And so I think this is really a question here about obviously assessing the permit, the application on its own merits, but also understanding that we're not starting with a clean slate here. There is an existing permit in place which could be activated by any owner. I'm comforted by some of the conditions that are here, which I think are stronger and in some way more severe than I've ever seen in relation to a Darebin planning application, particularly for a multi-use development of this nature adjacent to a railway station. And we have talked a lot in this council and in this chamber about transit-oriented development, and this seems to tick all those boxes in relation to everything that we can do from the set of conditions to deliver a type of outcome that is consistent with the values of both the applicant but also the potential future tenants of these properties. I think there's also a point to be made, which is, and the gentleman objector made the point to say that that this development will block the sunlight to the businesses that are immediately facing the proposed development, and will also have a range of other effects. I would say that the majority of those objections seem to be the case regardless of whether you're talking about the existing application or this proposal. So on that basis, I don't think they have enough merit to consider refusal of this basis. I actually think this is quite an iconic development. It's quite unique. I think we need to recognise that this is a new set of standard of development in Darebin, and I'd certainly like to see it succeed, and I think it lays down the groundwork for the sort of applications that we should be seeing more of in appropriate places, and I'll end it there.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Sidis, the seconder.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Echoing some of the sentiments of the mover, but it would indicate just opposite to that property, of course, we've had the previous developments associated with 283 Station Street and, of course, 236 Railway Place. So, if anything, it presents perhaps a bit of a template in terms of bookends associated with that gateway to the railway intersection. So, an area perhaps that's crying out for renewal and redevelopment. I share some of the concerns in relation to the product offering. If it wasn't the business model that was being presented, I'd be voting against, quite frankly, because its capacity to live off borrowed amenity associated with the car park that's there from VicTrack is abundantly obvious. It's not, with all due respect to Mr Rudd pointing out Railway Place as the place that they would park their cars. There's more parking to be had in the car park associated with the railway station. So we've had some debate in this particular place in relation to other proposals which of course have tried to do that in terms of support their proposition with borrowed amenity, and I've been one of the first to knock those applications back. Here we've got a different application and a different model, and I think in that respect giving some latitude as is requested perhaps is the only reason why I'm sort of leaning in favour of it. If we were looking at another private development with all the limitations associated with it and the fact that there are no real attempts to try and support
20 seconds.
On-site parking, I would have been voting against. But we have a potential here for something new, and I think in line with what's occurring around this place, redevelopment is obviously gaining pace, Mr Mayor, and on that basis I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Sudis. Councillor Villela,
I'm voting against it, Mr Mayor.
speak against.
Yes, speaking against it. Look, I think it has a lot of merit. This application has a lot of merit. It seems to be, according to the report, well designed and sustainable living, etc., which is to be encouraged. I'm just not convinced with the zero parking. I think I look at in the report. There's the Commons, which is a similar model. There is still demand there, according to the tribunal, that there's a requirement for parking. Whilst I respect the ethos, the principles upon which this is based, the reality is I think it's going to be very difficult to be absolutely to guarantee that parking won't be happening on the street. I think also I look at the broader picture and the long-term picture. There's lots of development happening in that area. So there's an accumulative effect that we can't just look at it, although I understand the application looks at the one application, but there's a lot of development happening in that area, and if we start waiving car parking, I just think long-term consequences will be regrettable. I still believe that, and then there's the visitors car park, and then there are the people who come to that area to shop. I just think whilst it has a lot of merit, you know that in this chamber I've been quite concerned about the waiving of car parking, and I think it would have a lot more merit if there was even just 10% or 15% car parking. It's great, but I just think there are long-term problems with it, especially in that area, Mr Mayor, and we can't go back if we make a decision that in the future proves to be the wrong one. Thank you.
Councillor Villela. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll be speaking against the approval of this application. I think we have to go back to basics in relation to this application, and notwithstanding some of the positive elements of this application, and it's been mentioned by councillors and also by our officers, but I really think that we have to go back to basics. So, in reading the report, I couldn't avoid not noting that like to me, I believe that it's an overdevelopment in terms of its visual bulk. I think also that in relation to its height, it's actually part of it's a 6-storey building, even though the previous application that was approved was a 5-storey building. Also, I note that one of the comments, and I think it's a very valid comment, made by the residents, that I think it will overwhelm the surrounding village feel of Fairfield, and I think that that's a very, very key point in relation to what we have before us. The other two reasons that I think are important is that I believe that I'm not convinced of condition 9. I've tried to raise some questions there. I'm not 100% convinced that condition 9 will actually safeguard the council in relation to future parking. I think the problem of parking will not be in a year's time, but actually be post 3 years' time. That's when we will note the parking issues. And also I think in terms of diversity of accommodation that's been offered at this site, I don't think that it actually meets the test there in terms of offering
20 seconds.
a range of diversity. And so on those bases, I don't feel comfortable in approving this application. And I just go back to my first point, is that I don't think it meets the basic planning requirements, notwithstanding that this is an innovative...
Thank you, Councillor Gregor. Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I also need to speak against this particular recommendation. Can I start by saying this is a very innovative design? I like this. I liken this to the Uber and the Airbnb in that it seeks to disrupt our normal planning process, and it certainly has disrupted our normal planning process. However, my concern is the residual risk to the council as part of this application, and I alluded to some of that in my questioning of Mr. Rudd earlier. I am concerned about the residual risks of future ownership and future renters of this proposed development. I'm also worried about the residual risks to the council should, with all due respect to Nightingale developers, should they go under and another company takes over, and what's going to happen to that? I am worried about the residual risk to the council if the owner's corporation fails to adhere to its founding principles and seeks to change or alter their original conditions further down the track. These are the residual risks that council has to carry should this development does not eventuate the way that it proposes to do. So on that, I am not comfortable with the amount of disproportionate risk applied to the council as opposed to risks that are borne by the proposed applicants. Thirdly, we are a planning authority. We're not here to create case law. We're here to administer the Planning and Environment Act. These proposals, as innovative as they are, have certain shortcomings in accordance of the Planning and Environment Act. We're not here to change the Act. We're here to administer the Act, and we need to bear in mind there are certain obligations on the council to do that. And finally, the point, what really swayed me is some of the presentation proposed by the opponents of the application, in that we do have to balance innovation versus existing neighbourhood amenity. While the innovation is very high on this application with due regard to the applicant, the impact on the residential amenity is also high, and is disproportionate again to the residential amenity of the neighbourhood.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lawrence.
I'd like to put an amendment to clause 9.
Can we hear it, please?
Final point, just that the period of 36 months be replaced with 72 months.
Sorry, couldn't hear that again.
36 months to 72 months.
72 months.
Is the mover happy with that?
Could I get some advice from the officers about just a professional comment about the 72-month proposal as an alternative to 36 months?
So my only concern is if this self-does change the that the longer the time, the more difficult it will be if we make it difficult on the council for half arguing. But again, that's not an issue if the applicants are comfortable with wording as they are with the commissioners wording.
Look, on that basis, as long as it's legal and within the confines of Section 173, I did go in that direction before. I'm willing to accept that.
That's
that
been
amendment.
accepted. Okay. You wish now to speak?
I'm assuming the seconder is accepted.
That's fine. Move and second accepted. Do you want to speak now, Councillor Lawrence? Everybody else had a chat about this one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak in favour of the motion now. I have had a lot of concerns about this, and obviously it's the concerns that residents have raised about what will be the future behaviour of residents in relation to car ownership and therefore the impact on car parking. Now, having said that, in the City of Darebin not so much, but in the City of Moreland, elsewhere, 50% car waivers are given, and as been mentioned before, a car waiver has been given on this site because of the constraints of the site on a previous application. So I'm a little bit reluctant on the zero tag, and you know, I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit of car parking here, and I'm also reluctant that initially because of the conditions going forward. Developers can give 7-year rental guarantees, so I think we can get a 7-year guarantee about parking behaviour. So That's why I'm sort of persuaded to support it. I have to say, you know, I'll be very concerned if we get applications after this that water down the environmental credentials of this. And I'd also say somehow we need a tighter constraints on the car ownership going forward. And I'm not sure, and that's something for the sector to look at. But I'm aware how VCAT's gone on this, and why I'm moving the amendment is because I feel it will be okay at VCAT, and I'd rather have a longer control on it.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor McCarthy, do you wish to close the debate?
Look, I welcome Councillor Lawrence's amendment. As mentioned, I think some greater security for local residents would be advantageous, and so I'm pleased that that's been put forward. I would like to ask councillors who've spoken against this proposal to consider something which we don't often get to consider, which is actually that we have a unique set of circumstances here, which is a completely different model of development to what we've seen prior. We have a so-called market of people that want to live here, that have embraced the idea of living in a zero carbon, low waste and obviously zero car development. We've spoken in this chamber on many occasions about this.
Closing, nothing new, please,
well,
nothing new.
Then I would ask councillors to reconsider their positions, because I think if we are going to approve this development and all that goes with it, I think we should be doing that because it typifies what we've actually been striving for, which is actually a higher quality form of development in these sorts of locations. And I think that this proposal is unique in the sense that it does deliver that on that offering, and it has the safeguard as proposed by Councillor Lawrence as well. So I unfortunately can't agree with those speaking against, because I think that this council on numerous occasions has granted waivers on a whole lot of sites because of either the commercial or residential opportunity that it delivers, and here is one of the few occasions where I'm actually comfortable with what's proposed. So I'll end it there.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Walsh, thanks for joining. Do you have any conflicts on any item tonight?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. You can be seated then. Okay. I'll now put that to a vote with Councillor Lawrence's amendment for Commission 9.6 from 36 to 72 months. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands. Those against? And I see 4 hands risen, 3 against, and Councillor Walsh will be abstaining.
Yes, because of my whiteness, I don't want to...
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Abstaining will actually count as a no, so the vote is now 4-4. Okay? Therefore, as Chairman, I will use my casting vote to support the applications. Let's see.
Can we ask for a division?
Councillor Villot has asked for division, so all those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Seatis, Councillor Fontana, Councillor Lawrence. Those against, please stand. I name Councillor Lee, Councillor Villot, Councillor Greco, and Councillor Walsh will be noted as abstaining, which councillors are no. Thank you, councillors. Members of the gallery, you can stay for the rest of the agenda, or you can leave quietly. Your item has been dealt with. Thank you. Quietly, please. Quietly. Future. My journo's gone to this. Okay, thank you, members of the gallery. We now go to item 5.2 for consideration, 30 McMahon Road Reservoir. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This application seeks approval to construct 3 double-storey dwellings on the lot. The 3 dwellings consist of a single 3-bedroom dwelling.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks. Members, go. Please, we need silence because it does echo. We can't hear the officer. Thanks, Darren.
Mr Mayor, the 3 dwellings comprise a single 3-bedroom dwelling. The remaining 2 are 2-bedroom dwellings. 4 car spaces are proposed with planning scheme. So there are 2 car spaces for the 3-bedroom dwellings and a car space for each of the single, the 2-bedroom dwellings. Open space for each of the 3 dwellings is provided in a constitutional ground or land. As explained in the officer's report, the site has the area of 707 square metres and is included in the general residential zone 1. That's the zone that requires a higher amount of secure private space. The application separate grounds of objection, and the officer's response to these concerns is detailed on pages 57 and 58 of the officer's report. As you'll see from the officer's assessment, there is a high level of compliance. Virtually every standard is the assessment section of the planning is compliant with. The application is therefore recommended for support.
Thank you, Darren. We now have speakers for this item.
Yes, there's one speaker, applicant, on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chris. If you're here, can you please join us at the front? You know the drill. You've got 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. This is obviously, I would hope, far less controversial and hopefully will cause you far less trouble. But I'm going to take a very short amount of time to congratulate you that Darren has a progressive and innovative community. People who are choosing to live a sustainable lifestyle are choosing Darren as the place they want to live. So the decision you've just made on this item as a council, I think is making an important contribution to the future of Darren, and it's very much looking to the future as opposed to looking at the past. So I don't think this is a decision to break from the pattern, but I think you've made a courageous decision. On this one, far more middle of the road and predictable for what you expect to see on this side, which is a more suburban site, where the general residential zone 1, so we expect to see the 55 square metre yards, 40 square metres, that's the core area, and then it's fully delivered. It's 3 townhouses, 2-storey, a big step back off the rear. It's 39% site coverage, which is comfortably under that 50% benchmark you've set for this area. The yards are all meeting or exceeding the expectation of the zone. The rear one actually has 73, so there's a newer 20 square metres more than that larger benchmark you set. This is not a design that's just hit those markers and then fill everything else. It actually has over 40% as permanent development areas. Mr. Rudd said it's a virtual clean sheet on the rest of the if you actually go to the table, it's an absolutely clean sheet. There's not a single standard that is not the yes in the standard and objective assessment there. So what I'd say to you is, yes, we have 15 objections. This is a pattern of objection that you're well familiar with in this chamber. This is not something that would, in the ordinary course, have come up here if you're looking at who in the street is objected. So I'll leave you with the office of the refusing the interview. I commend the recommendation for approval to you.
Thank you, Chris. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. We now have questions from councillors. Councillor McCarthy.
No question. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
There's no questions.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McCarthy has moved. Councillor Lawrence seconded. Wish to speak?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. There's no comments or discussion. I'll move that. Councillor Lawrence has seconded.
I'll second it, yes. I'll just note that the objection of an oversupply of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments isn't relevant to that.
Correct, it's not. They've actually read the application. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Members of the gallery, that item has now been supported by council. A notice of decision with a planning permit will be issued. Objectors will have 21 days of appeal should they choose to go to VCAT. The applicant will also be notified of council's decision to issue a notice of decision. Next item of consideration is 5.3, 534 Plainview Road, Preston. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application seeks approval to construct a 5 triple-storey dwellings on a lot. It is on the Plainview Road corridor, which has been identified in the Main Street, Housing Street in the High Change area. All of the dwellings contain 2 bedrooms in the section in the garage. There's no parking proposed. The application therefore seeks to pay for the purpose of the space. area's been identified with a 4-storey independent maximum height. The application for is 3 stories there. The application has been advertised, there have been 16 inspections received, and the grounds for completion of the officer's response to concerns detailed on pages 75 to 80. The application is being submitted to assess the planning application under the existing planning scheme, but also under the controls proposed in C137. And it's a fairly comprehensive assessment, and that concludes the application is supportable. It's in alignment with the council's policy objectives to intensify resident development along the trans liability and planning code. That application is recommended for support and decisions.
Thank you, Darren. Do we have any speakers for this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have David Giovanni on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Darren. David, if you can please join us at the front here. You have 5 minutes to present your case.
Good evening. Good evening, councillors. Thanks for allowing me to present on behalf of my clients. First thing I'd like to say for this development is that this land set aside to be in the residential growth zone, and as councillors would know, we've got the neighbourhood residential, which is the most restrictive zone, the general residential, which is your middle of the road, and then the residential growth, which perhaps is the most aggressive of the three, where council is proposing to locate most of its housing. And I'd like to just highlight the purpose point, the second purpose point of that zone. It's to provide housing at increased densities in buildings up to and including 4-storey buildings. So that's the level of change anticipated. So what council's been saying is we've got to provide single and 2-bedroom units. The majority of those will be along Plenty Road, High Street, in zones such as these commercial zones, the Nightingale, things like that, which then allows lesser intensity in the more hinterland areas, which is your residentials and so forth. So what's going to happen through the new zones that will be changed, and we're going to see a lot more of this happening. It's already happening. If you go to this site, we're down the road, there's already examples of development of this scale not far from here. I'd like to highlight just a few positive aspects of the proposal. Firstly, we've worked very closely with council officers. Vic Roads is supportive of it as well. But there's a design and development overlay, which is a means of assessing the proposal. We achieve very high compliance with that. But if you just have a look, councillors, if you can take out the plans and just look at the elevations. One of those is the streetscape plan. You can see the streetscape plan. So even though we're 3 stories, if you look at the California bungalow next door, we're effectively only 1 story above that in terms of how you read it. And even though we're in a residential growth zone at 3 stories, we're actually below 9 metres. Now, if you're in a general residential zone, you're average street, a few streets behind. 9 metres is the limit, but we're below that 9 metres. So we're not pushing that down. It's quite an intense, aggressive development. On that same page, particularly the top left-hand corner, the elevations of the front elevation, that dotted line on the side is that envelope that B17 of res code. There's an envelope with setbacks. Again, we meet that. So again, not pushing the boundaries. It's only an aggressive proposal. And what that tiering does, if you notice the elevation in the street, you've got the ground level across, and then it progressively comes into each level. And what that does is it allows the amenity impacts such as shadowing, bulk to be absorbed. So if you go to the shadow plans, it's a good example there, the shadow plans on the page above it. At 9 AM, we just go over the property to the south. At midday, again, small shadows, and also 3 PM, very, very small shadows. They not only comply with the residential growth zone, they comply in the normal residential context, 4 or 5 streets in a hinterland context. That property to the south has windows. There's a formula we need to meet called north-facing windows provisions. We meet that. Our car parking is provided there. And one of the most positive aspects of this proposal is at the back, the property to the rear isn't in the growth zone. They're in the general residential zone. What sensible planning says you've got to protect that property. What we've done there is we've got a conventional townhouse there. So that one there is just 2 bedrooms, a ground level sort of 37 square metre courtyard. The council officer wants it to be 40, we're happy with that. So we'll have a 40 square metre ground level courtyard opposite the adjoining backyard. You can plant trees there. And the upstairs is set back over 5.8 metres there. So in the normal 5.5 metre setback, there's absolutely no shadow into the rear. It's a really good proposal. We've worked with council. We've actually dropped 1 unit along the process to achieve a better compliance, and it's one that's not pushing the boundaries, and I think it's pretty clear there, as you can see it, and we've got the support of officers. So we'd ask councillors if you could please reward our efforts to work with your officers to drop the units. We've been very patient, and it's a good outcome for council.
Thank you, Dave. If you can resume your seat in the gallery, you now go to councillors for questions. Any questions?
Happy to move.
There's no questions. We have a mover, Councillor Lawrence. I have a seconder, Councillor Oliver Walsh. Anyone who wishes to speak?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, obviously given the zoning here, this isn't maximising the yield as per the heights that are permitted in this area, and it is good to see that through advice one unit has been dropped. It's good to see also the alteration to the actual landscape around the rear unit. We don't see that often, and unfortunately I think we won't see it on Plenty Road often, so it will be less development that will come later on.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Walsh, anything to add?
Yeah, look, I think this is a good development. It's you know, an area that has been identified and as an area that does need some growth, and you know, it is reasonably compliant as well. So I've got no problem with supporting this.
Okay. Any other speakers? Councillor Lee?
I'll speak against Mr Mayor, if I may. I think the application does meet merit of the site. However, it does seek to maximise the usage of the site, and I can highlight several shortfalls which I think could be better addressed in this application. First of all, the site is very narrow. It only has 12.5 metre frontage, and to squeeze in the amount of units that it does on a 563 square metre land with 5 units, I think is an overreach in the saturation point of the particular application. I understand that this is an area for residential growth. However, it does not transition well into the rear of the property, as the applicant has said. There is a general residential zone at the back, and while there is a 2-storey form at the back, it is a reverse living in order to maximise the yield of the site. So on that particular application, it is there to drive up yield. So it is a development that is there to artificially inflate the potential of the site by reverse living, and it is not something that is there to support existing neighbourhood amenities. I do note that it fails at least 3 of our Darebin planning scheme standards in relation to side and rear setbacks and wall on boundaries and north-facing windows, as the report says. And these again transition, if you look at it, these relate directly to the transition of this particular application to the rear of the property, or the eastern side of the property, where it abuts to the neighbourhood residential zones, general residential zones rather. So it is a good application on the front of the site, but it has a poor transition, and it does fail 3 standards of our planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Villela?
Yeah, I also want to speak against it. In addition to the points raised by Councillor Lee, I also believe that there's a visual bulk situation where it's just one continuous mass rather than a separation like we saw in the previous application. So I think, in addition to Councillor Lee, there is the issue of, I think, of overdevelopment and it's overbulk as well, which doesn't fit into the rest of this particular area. Thank you, Mr. The visual bulk is an issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villela. Any other speakers? Councillor Lawrence, you want to close the debate if there's no other speakers?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I will just note, yes, there is some reverse living in the front of this development, but the rear 2-storey unit at the back has conventional layout. We'll just correct an error.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Members of the gallery, council has decided to issue a notice of decision. A planning permit technically has been issued. Objectors to this application will have 21 days of appeal to go to VCAT should they choose to do so. The applicant will also be notified of council decision that we have issued a notice of decision for a planning permit. Thank you, members of the gallery. You can leave if you've come to that item. We'll now go to the next item of consideration, which is 5.4, 62 Barry Street, Northcote.
Thank you, councillors. This is an application to extend the existing zoning to
in addition to part demolition. In more detail, the proposal will involve the following: demolish the front porch and rear of the dwelling, demolish the north wall of the rear garage, construct a new front veranda including masonry, timber posts and lacework, modifications to the existing ground floor plus an extension that will connect to the proposed garage, proposed to extend upward to the first floor, consisting of 3 bedrooms, a new study, guest room, ensuite, and deck is also proposed above the existing garage. And finally, a new introduction. This proposal is advertised in the linear fashion and has taken 6 objections from the community. The objections are summarised as follows: overlooking, the extension does not respect local character, the evaluation of property, the extension is consistent with the heritage character area, proposed layout and remote suburbs in the location of this and traffic congestion. Council's error assessment of this application is that it is supportable. Conditions already included in the recommendation. It is relevant to note, though, that the trigger for the planning permit in this instance is only a heritage overlay. So a planning permit is required to demolish and extend the heritage overlay. So grounds relating to overlooking, shadowing, traffic impact are not planning considerations for this proposal. Our Heritage Advisor has assessed the application and found it acceptable. He has requested the imposition of the condition altering the window formation to the first floor as it was presented to the street. We have imposed a condition requiring that. The first floor is set back a significant distance from the street boundary. Council will recommend this for the condition.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. Darren, we have some speakers for this item.
Yes,
Is Michael here? Thank you, Michael. If you can join us here at the front, take your seat there at the table. And you have 5 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I'm going to keep it brief. Just the recommendations from the planner. I'm speaking in the architect that designed the project for the house. I'm just speaking on behalf of the client as well. Design this is for a family home. In the Leicester area of Northcote. It's 50 metres away from the shops, close to parks and amenities, which is the right place for a single dwelling family home. The amenities of the existing house will be vastly improved. The front veranda will be reworked to return the front of the house back to its original splendour. At the rear of the property there is space for 2 to 3 cars, and flowing from the family spaces there's a set of stairs that goes to a guest bedroom at the back. This is the area that's been the most contentious. There's 5 objectors. Of the 6 are in the laneway at the back. But we've designed it in such a way, taking into the considerations of the amenities of those properties, and it's RESCO compliant. There's a 3-metre laneway at the rear of Barry Street, and the garages and sheds of all the properties behind, providing adequate buffers and limits any views. My recommendation of the plan should be
So you finished, Michael? Yes. Thank you very much. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. Thank you for that. We have an objector also, Darren. Artie, if you can join us at the front here, thank you. You've also got 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. Gallegos, directly next door. They've been residents there for 34 years. I'm speaking on their behalf due to language difficulties. They've reviewed all the plans and seen the proposed development. They feel that double-storey garage and double-storey is not in the neighbourhood character. The whole of the West Garden precinct there is predominantly single-storey. The skyline is pretty much single-storey, and obviously it's got chimneys. It's rather unique. It's not really, doesn't exist in many other places in Melbourne. And again, it needs to be certainly appreciated. We're concerned with the visual bulk. Most likely the external materials would be pretty much homogeneous. It's bulky and it's square. It almost looks like a bit of industrial shed look. They're a bit worried about their property value, but because it doesn't match in with the rest of the area, they feel that the morning sun will be blocked out, and also ventilation issues. Just when they walk out of their backyard, you can see the fences like this, and then all of a sudden it's just going to go up, and there's never been really a two-storey backyard back garage in that area. They're very reasonable people. I've got no objections to people renovating their homes and extending and improving. It's just that the double story doesn't fit in the neighbourhood great deal, and we're just worried about overlooking and the bulk of the visual look. So it's particularly the second story garage, being a square roof doesn't match with any other roof in there as well. So just like a square area. Most of the roofs are cable, and that's the big concerns. We're very worried about the matter, and that's possible. So thank you for considering.
Thank you very much, Art. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. Thank you. Over to now councillors to ask questions. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Lee.
Just a quick question in relation to the skillion form of the roof, as opposed to the gable roof. Has our heritage advisor passed an opinion on that?
Yes, Councillor. The extension in the officer's view is played down. So the portion of the building that's visible to the street has the traditional appearance. Right. Visiting the site today, many of the traditional architectural elements of the building have been removed, and as the architect indicated, those have been replaced. Right. So the veranda, the lacework, and the extension, which, if you refer to the proposed west elevation, the height of the extension of the two-storey structure is touched on the apex of the roof of the existing building, and is set back approximately 30 metres from the front side boundary, which is an appropriate way to extend a heritage building instead of lighting component back and potentially change its form, play it down, and materials used, and the maximum does that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCarthy.
Look, I'm just a little bit confused, and maybe I can have my concerns relieved. I'm just looking at the proposed elevations, and the proposed street north elevation, the top left-hand corner, seems to present the extension as visible from, well, certainly from the other side of the street, if you position yourself there, and presumably I know Barry Street very well, but I'm just wanting to understand I suppose what my perception is here, which is that extension seems to be visible based on the drawing here. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yes, so it's very difficult to refer to two-dimensional drawings. When you view it as a two-dimensional drawing, it's certainly visible. It's probably best to look at the west elevation and the proposed east elevation. It clearly shows that the extension is set back a considerable distance from the traditional roof. So, yes, you will see
elements of the new building that they are in existence. One hidden in the street that will be secondary to the main existing heritage building. So you see heritage building first, and you see elements of the new structure to the rear.
Councillor McCarthy.
I suppose, thank you for the answer there. Just to understand where the triggers for heritage controls apply in this instance. I know in some cases where we have a heritage overlay, it's the street frontage of the buildings, not the back of the property. Can I get some clarity in relation to this particular heritage overlay, where the heritage elements apply?
The heritage triggers here are to demolition and construction. So it relates to the entire site, not to just the frontage. So in this instance, part demolition and extension and new construction are triggered by the heritage overlay.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? If there's no questions, we have a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Lawrence has moved the recommendation. Councillor Lee has seconded. Wish to speak, Councillor Lawrence?
No, just I would note in regards to front setback that 13 metres is quite a distance, consistent with treatments in neighbouring cities with Victorian architecture, and from the footpath, etc., that won't be visible because the line of sight on an elevation is forever.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence.
So I think this is the kind of change that we do have to accept to accommodate families' growing needs.
Second, wish to add anything?
Nothing to add.
Okay. There's no further discussion or debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Members of the gallery, council has decided to issue a notice of decision for that item. All parties will be notified of council's decision. The objective will have 21 days of appeal right should they choose to go to VCAT. Applicant will also be notified of council's issuing of a notice of decision to grant the planning permit. Next item for consideration is 5.5, 7 Highland Street in Kingsbury. Over to the officers.
Mr. Mayor, this application seeks approval to construct 4 double-storey dwellings. All dwellings are 2 bedrooms each. Dwellings provide with a single car space. Open space for the 4 dwellings is proposed in 2 ways, and 3 dwellings are provided with open space in the form of reverse living. So there is a single one of the dwellings which conditions ground floor open space. The site is zoned general residential zone 2. It's in the Kingsbury area, 638 square metres and several hundred metres in the application has been advertised. There have been 20 objections received, grounds of objection, and the officer's response to the summons on pages 157 through to 162. Mr. Mayor, just to be brief, the application has been assessed and puts into the position not way too far, and it's a design that does correspond appropriately to the site and the context. It's largely a continuous form across the site, extending in mass to 2 stories from one side to the other. It's anomalous with the site's context. There are 2-storey forms in this area, but they all, without exception, step down to the rear. There's a sparing application also obviously in this particular location. The application is therefore recommended for refusal based on the grounds expressed in page 107, and those grounds are explained in full through the officer's assessment of the report.
Thank you, Darren. We have speakers for this item.
This is an objector that's requested to speak. Mr. Peter Kyriakakis.
Okay, Peter, are you here? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we'll give Peter a miss then. Over to
I'm happy to move it, Mr. Mayor.
Very simple, very easy. Councillor Lawrence has moved. Councillor Villada seconded the officer's recommendation, which is for refusal. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I wouldn't.
No. Okay, there's no discussion on that item, so then I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, thank you for that. Members of the gallery, council has issued a refusal for that item. The applicant will be notified of council decision. They will have 60 days of appeal rights to go to VCAT should they choose to challenge council decision. All objectors will be notified of council decision that we have refused that application. Next item of consideration is 5.6, 33 Miller Street in Thornbury.
Councillors, this
Dual lock.
Application for a medium density development, consisting of 2 double-story dwellings at the site known as 33 Mill Street, London. The summary proposal includes dwelling 1 on the front of the street, which consists of 2 bedrooms at ground level, plus amenities. In the first floor will consist of an open plan living area with a small space of balcony with square metres. Dwelling 2 is to the rear of that dwelling, also consists of 2 bedrooms at ground level and amenities. The first floor again will have a living space and connecting balcony. Each dwelling is provided a single garage and access to those car parking spaces on a single crossover extending to Miller Street. The dwellings have a contemporary design. And the overall height of these dwellings is 6.64 metres per inch. The application is advertised in the normal fashion, attracting 5 objections from the community. The grounds of objection are listed on page 127 of the agenda, councillors. A couple of points I'd like to make is that the site has good locational characteristics. It is close to the Gilbert Road and Green Street Activity Centre. The site has good access to public transport. Darragh and Housing Street identifies the site as one in an area of substantial change. Each dwelling provided with the required car parking and space provision. We recommend that the application be supported with conditions. Condition 1A will require modifications on the front of the rooms. Condition A will require a revised first floor plan leading the east facing stair windows for both units 1 and 2. Condition 1B alters each street into balcony. Condition C also deals with treatment to windows to prevent overheating from one room to the other room. We recommend that an NAD be issued with conditions listed.
Thank you, Peter. Darren, any speakers for this item?
Mr Mayor, with 2 speakers, the applicant on behalf of the applicant
So, can we have the applicant's representative here to speak? Thank you. You can take the seat there at the front. You've got 5 minutes.
Thanks for the opportunity, councillors, to make submissions to you. I'm going to be brief. Just like to alert your attention to page 126 in the top there, where there's a reference to a previous planning application that was made. You'll notice that back in January 2015, council refused an application by the same client for 3 dwellings on the site. At that point, we looked at the opportunity to go to RECAT, sat down with the council officers, and they gave us some very good and strong guidance as to what they'd like to see the bills in their review. What that culmination is the plan you see in front of you and the assessment you see in front of you, which is endorsing the proposal. I'm not going to take you through the level of compliance that's there for you. I would like to draw your attention to the conditions and to indicate that we do accept them in their entirety, so there are certainly no issues of concern with us with regard to those changes that are sought. Just to reinforce though the point that was made before, I think some distinction perhaps from the previous application, whilst we're in a general residential zone, we are in an area for substantial change, so an element that is particularly appropriate. Just to finish off with though, I'll just also finish by saying with regard to the summary that's been provided by the planning officer with regard to the objections, I think in many respects there's no need for me to go through those. What the officer is doing there is considering each of the items that have been put by neighbours. They're relevant issues, but they're ones that we say are well covered by the conditions with regard to issues such as overlook and overshadowing and the like. I do have the architect here with me, so given them my 1 minute 30 odd, there's anything I can profile for you, I'm happy to do so.
If that's your presentation, you can resume your seat. Thank you. Okay, Darren, we have an objector here as well.
Yes, Mr Mayor,
Thank you, Jeff. If you can take the seat at the front here.
Deputy Mayor and councillors, I'm Jeff Lambourne. I own and occupy number 31 Mill Street.
We've owned the property for approximately about 18 years. We've got no real objection to the development of the number 33, apart from the fact that you'll notice on the architect's drawing of our house, 31, there is no solar panels depicted in the drawing. Now, we brought this attention to in our objection. It wasn't addressed in the amended plan, which we were quite disappointed in, actually. Now, our issue mainly with this development is overshadowing. It's actually going to overshadow our property approximately half the day in the winter months, slightly less obviously in summer. The solar panels that we have are on the northwestern aspect of our gabled roof, which obviously in shadow will impact on us financially. In light of current trends in environmental practices regarding electricity generation, we feel that we'd be unfairly disadvantaged if we lost the capacity to generate solar power. We've had other issues on behalf of number 35. They're also going to suffer substantial shadowing over their property, to the west. We're obviously to the east, where we'll lose the afternoon sunlight, and the people on number 35 are obviously going to lose all morning sunlight. We also have a couple of issues regarding privacy, generation of noise due to cars driving the length of the block to the rear. This is a single front block that hasn't had a driveway previous. It's a single front drone, narrow block. As I say, we're not actually opposed to the redevelopment, but we would really like it if there could be maybe possibly an amendment of the front double storey, set it back, which would allow us to enjoy the sunlight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can resume your seat. Councillor McCarthy.
I suppose a question following on from the objector's comment and request relating to the potential to condition this proposal to reduce the impact on the solar PV. Looking at the satellite image, you can see where the panels are placed on number 31. I'm just wanting to get a view from our officers about what options are available to the planning committee to consider conditioning this to minimise the impact on those adjoining solar panels.
Councillor, before answering that question, I might make the point that our officer has made an assessment of the impact of the development on the solar panel. That's clearly noted on page 128 and 129. So all that assessment is reasonable in this in terms of the strategic context of the site, given the setbacks of the development proposed. Is it reasonable to expect a two-storey structure to be constructed facing the street? And our assessment is that it is reasonable, given the designers have attempted to create narrow building curves, achieving setbacks exceeding 3 metres at the lower level, and possibly, the lower level 3.5 setback, and at the upper level 3.5, 3.2, doesn't vary. I don't believe that you could further increase that setback because it would destroy the internal amenities of the first floor below. So if you're seeking no shadow at all, we're basically saying that you have a two-story component facing the street because of the sign.
So then a subsequent question, thank you for that answer, is what provision exists for planning committee to request or require the applicant in this instance to pay for the relocation of solar panels to maximise their capacity? Should the owner of 31 seek to see that? I know this has been something we've talked about. Is that an opportunity available to us as a condition?
it is an opportunity available to you, but as planning officers, we strongly suggest you not to take that approach because I believe it would not succeed at DCAT. As just described, I think the good setbacks create a situation that this is reasonable. It is reasonable to expect a development of this form in Mill Street, Running Street. The neighbour has chosen to place these solar panels on the western side of the hip roof, closest to the neighbour's property. There should always be some expectation that there will be a development of some sort constructed alongside the line. So as I mentioned earlier, you could recommend otherwise, but as planning officers, we're suggesting that what is proposed here in terms of impact on the solar panels, and yes, there will be some shadow cast, and obviously clearly notes that in the report, but we believe that to be within reasonable limits.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I had originally had questions on a similar line to Councillor McCarthy's first question, but given Mr. Mayor that there has been, I guess, given what the applicant said, but also the statement from Mr. Lambourne, I guess I'm asking whether there is perhaps, has there been, I guess, much, through you, Ms. Mayor, to our officers, has there been much dialogue between the applicant and the objector? Because it seems that they're not, it seems to me that they're not actually all that far apart, and perhaps there could be a good opportunity, perhaps there could be an opportunity here.
I'm not aware of any additional dialogue between the applicant and the objector, Councillor.
Councillor Lee.
Just where we are up to in the 60-day assessment framework.
So close to over that period, Councillor, so at this stage, it will be lodged.
There's no further questions. We have a recommendation.
So, how much over the 60 days? How much over the 60-day mark are we?
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, Councillor Walsh. 60 days is 60 days.
It's well over, Councillor.
Thank you. We have a recommendation. If there's no further questions.
I'll move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Lee. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Cetus. Councillor Lee, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do feel the pain of the property owner of 31 in that the location of the solar panel are there to maximise the capturing of the setting sun, particularly in the summer month. I know that that it was something that will be impacted by this development. However, there are two things that this development has shown some genuine intent. First is their genuine attempt at reducing the yield on the site from 3 units to 2 units, and therefore lessen the impact potentially of the development to the surrounding neighbourhood. Secondly, if you do look at the diagrams, there has been some attempt by the applicant to move unit 1 in the front further to the western aspect of the proposed development site in order to minimise the impact on the solar panel. So there has been some attempt. It is unfortunate that that cannot be mitigated, the whole overshadowing cannot be mitigated, but I am guided by the VCAT case whereby there are established precedents whereby the total elimination of overshadowing cannot be completely eliminated through a planning process. So on that basis, reluctantly, I have to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Seconder, Councillor Cetus, anything to add?
Just briefly, I note that perhaps of all the diagrams that have been given this evening, Mr. Mayor, these are probably the best, in as much as we've got a colour coding system that runs through it. but unfortunately, it presents its own limitations because there's no shadow cast diagram.
There is. There is. It's just
Maybe I missed
The last
it.
page.
it's this one here.
Maybe it's through all the colours.
Yes.
So does dark grey indicate shadow? I mean, not only we've got, time, clock, movement, Mr Mayor, I missed that part. But just a quick point, we can't actually prevent the impacts where, for instance, we have a circumstance in which neighbours have positioned solar panels. We've had actually anecdotal evidence, which we found that quite ironic and humorous in some respects, sadly, from Councillor McCarthy himself, which suggested that people were cutting down their trees in order to improve solar access to their solar panels. So, you have to ask yourself a question in that circumstance: how much mitigation can you achieve by yourself in order to improve direct access? But in all seriousness, there was a previous VCAT ruling which actually went to the heart of the problem. You don't have a right to direct solar access. What you have a right to is access to light. There's a big difference. So if it's the ambience, fine. It's not the direct light that's the issue. So you can be blocked out potentially, but if you have light positioning down or around you, then it'll receive a qualified tick from VCAT, and that's unfortunately where things are at.
Thank you, Councillor Sudis. There's no further debate or comment. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Members of the Gary Council has decided to issue a notice of decision granting a permit for that item. All parties will be notified of council decision. Can I encourage the applicant and objector to maybe have a chat or negotiate an outcome? I don't think anyone wants to see this go to VCAT. Thank you. If you've come to that item, you may leave now. Otherwise, we'll keep moving. Next item is 5.7, application for planning permit for 38 Mansfield Street, Thornbury. Over to the officers.
Thank you, councillors. This is an application for immediate community development at the Mansfield Street, Thornbury. In brief, the proposal includes construction of 5 double-storey dwellings. The front will have 3 bedrooms, that's 2 car parking spaces, comprising the double space garage, and 2 dwellings with 2 bedrooms and single space garage. Moving to the parking proposed in this development. Vehicle access will be gained via an existing crossover at west end of the site. Pedestrian access is proposed along the eastern edge of the site. Maximum height of these proposed lines is 6.6 metres. The open space provision is in the form of balconies and ground open space. Councillors, this application is advertised in the normal fashion. Side by side, the notice is made to the community. The grounds of objection are listed at page 145 to page 146 of the agenda. Councillors, their assessment of this application is that the project is supportable, subject to conditions. There's an eclectic mix of housing styles on Mansfield Street, and in particular, I think the attention to a very similar development diagonally opposite
That's good.
diagonally opposite. It consists of 6 lines and now almost complete. Councillors, it is also relevant to note that we have traditional front garden proposed, sitting forward is dwelling 1. Dwelling 1 has a balcony, 2 and 4 also have balconies. Dwelling 5 is provided with ground open space. It is also relevant to note that dwelling 5 is configured differently to the other dwellings in that it acknowledges the secluded backyard space of neighbouring buildings. Therefore, the building form is set back further than the other dwellings. And in addition, a balcony is not provided for that dwelling. That has ground open space, as I mentioned. Councillors, we're of the opinion that the project is supportable, subject to conditions. This is in the agenda. And I turn your attention to condition We're also suggesting that one of the storage units be relocated. We've also proposed a condition that the development space associated with lines 2, 3, 4 and 5 be increased in size to have a minimum dimension of 2 metres. Now that basically means the living space is reduced and the development space increased. And the main reason for that is to ensure that we still maintain a reasonable amenity to the occupants in that those balconies will need to be screened. They are narrow, you have less amenities, so making them wider will improve the amenity for future occupants. We have also suggested that the retreat associated with line 5 is reduced in size, and the main reason for that is our view that could convert to an additional bedroom. So making it a small space will prevent that from happening. Council will support the proposal conditions in relation to the agenda.
Thank you, Peter. Darren, the speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant and the objector are registered. On behalf of the applicant, I have Sue Young, registered to speak.
Okay. Sue, if you can join us at the front, will you please? Thank you, Sue. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Obviously, I'm here to speak on behalf of the panel applicant, who agrees with and supports the recommendation of Council's Planning Department for Council to issue a notice of decision to grant planning permit tonight. I'd like to confirm on behalf of my client that all the conditions recommended by the council officers are acceptable by the applicant as permit conditions. I will keep my submission very brief tonight, but I would like to use this opportunity to briefly reiterate some of the key merits of this application. In particular, the application achieves overall compliance with Clause 55 of the Darabin Planning Scheme. It also advances the outcomes of the Darabin Housing Strategy. The introduction of housing strategy into the planning scheme through Amendment C138 is a significant and commendable direction that will deliver Darabin's housing needs over the next 20 years. The strategic housing framework plan locates the site near the Thornbury neighbourhood centre and within an incremental housing change area. The proposal is a modest, medium density development, and it is an appropriate scale given the level of change expected within this area. The proposal has been architecturally designed in response to the area's character in a positive way. It includes a mixture of 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings, which contributes to Council's housing diversity goals. From an amenity point of view, the development has been sensitively designed to prevent any unreasonable off-site amenity impacts to the neighbouring properties. As a consequence of the site's location, the setbacks and orientations, overshadowing impacts to the adjoining properties are well within the limits of West Coast Standard B21. The submitted shadow diagrams confirm that the shadow cast by the proposed new development is generally of the same extent as the existing shadows. Therefore, the objective of Standard B21 is met. The conditions recommended by Council's planning officers appropriately addresses the potential overlooking concerns raised by the objectors. As I've previously mentioned, the conditions are acceptable by our clients. The proposal does not include any commercial or industrial uses that will create noise impacts that are not normal to a residential area. Overall, the proposal will not cause any unreasonable off-site amenity impacts. The Council's traffic engineer has assessed the proposal and is comfortable with the proposed development. The surrounding road network can comfortably accommodate the very modest additional increase in traffic volumes that will be generated by 5 dwellings on this site. The site is situated in close proximity to the Thornbury railway station and within walking distance to 2 train routes on High Street. Taking into account the availability of sustainable modes of public transport within the area, the proposed reduction of 1 visitor car parking space is appropriate. The requirement to reduce the size of unit 5 will prevent any potential increase of statutory car parking requirements. Again, I confirm that this condition is acceptable by our clients. Now, Council officers have noted that Council has received 21 objections during the advertising period. I would like to use this opportunity to highlight to councillors that approximately 2/3 of these objections were pro forma objections. Almost all of those pro forma objections were submitted by residents who were between 3 to 8 kilometres from the subject site, and in one instance, one of these objectors is located approximately 16 kilometres from the subject site. We submit that the number of objections does not in itself establish that there will be a significant social impact. As the planning officer states in this report, the objectors' concerns about net community benefit cannot be substantiated. Overall, the proposal is likely to have a positive social effect for the community. It will contribute positively to Yarra's housing diversity strategy. In conclusion, the applicant respectfully asks that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit consistent with the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Sue. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. An objector has asked to speak, Darren. Thanks, Judy. You can join us at the front here, and you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I think, councillors, it's nice to be able to talk to you. I think what I've noticed tonight, and one of the things we really need to take care of, is about the people who actually live in these areas. Lots of the talk has been about the regulations, and lots of talk has been about what's good for the future. And we're not people who disagree with that. We're living in an area where we know has a substantial amount of development going on. But I can tell you that I represent people who live either side of this development and in that street and watching it change pretty much every day. To say that the apartment building that's just gone over the road is identical is very untrue, according to the plans that I've been able to see at the moment. And we just really are concerned about the ongoing viability of our area to keep the character and keep the things that we love about it. We know that there's been apartment blocks and things developed over there over many, many years, but that doesn't mean that we have to not learn from our mistakes when planning for the future. In fact, I think that's really important. And we're not about objecting for objection's sake. We're not asking that this not go ahead. What we are asking council to consider is how we can do that in a way that mitigates the living style for the people who are already there, and that we can do it in a way which will embrace the council's new way forward. So on that, I think, when I look at the streetscape and see 2 townhouses with wooden facades alongside the proposal, I'd be asking about, well, why can't we have something that actually just blends into the area a little more? That would be something that we would find to be really, really valuable, either in material or in facade. Having just done a recent renovation myself, that was certainly something we took into consideration about how can we blend in to keep the character of this neighbourhood. I think that's important. And we know that there's lots of stuff happening and we want to support that. But we're the people who live there. To say that there is no impact with driving and parking is really just not fair. We're the people who struggle every day with the school down the road, with the parking taking up places where we can't get access to parking at all because we don't have off-street parking, all of us. So I think that to just ignore those things is to really miss the human side of all this, which is what I'm asking you to consider. Certainly, from my perspective at our house at number 40, I have grave concerns about the overlooking directly into our lounge room and our dining room. I'd like to make sure that that is taken care of because that's a privacy issue for us. Parking on the property already we think is an overdevelopment, and parking will make it very difficult on that site. Council have responded. You understand that there's an increase in the volume of traffic already in there because planning for speed humps that are going on this month, I believe. So we know that there's an increase in traffic volume. We're just asking that we keep it moderate. So in conclusion, I think what we're really asking you to consider is a reduction in the number of units and strict compliance with the parking regulations. Amendment to the facade so that it's in closer keeping with the area so that we can maintain some of the character of that neighbourhood. Balconies on the east side to be removed or have modified so that they don't access our privacy, and modifications in the plans to reduce shadowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. We now go to councillors for questions. questions? Councillor McCarthy?
I don't have a question. I've actually I've considered this quite a bit, so I've got an alternative recommendation which councillors would be aware of. I've circulated it previously.
Alternative recommendation.
Second it, Mr Mayor.
So I'm happy to read. I
Sorry.
probably should read it, but unless there's questions.
I have got a question. I'm happy to consider an alternative motion, Councillor McCarthy, but I've got some.
Questions first, then we'll consider.
Mr Mayor, where are we at with these 60 days?
Officers?
We've exceeded the 60 days with this one as well, Councillor.
Not surprised.
I'm happy to second it, Mr Mayor.
I'll read it just for the benefit of all councillors and for the gallery. The alternative motion is that council refuse the application with grounds as follows. 1, the proposal does not respect the neighbourhood character of the area. 2, the development does not comply with the following standards and or objectives of clause 55 of the Darebin Planning Scheme. A, standard B1 neighbourhood character. B, standard B10 energy efficiency. C, standard B13 landscaping. D, standard B14 access. E, standard B17 side and rear setbacks. F, standard B28 private open space. G, standard B29 solar access to open space. And then point 3, the minimal first floor setbacks of the development to the secluded private open space of the adjoining property to the south, east and west would cause the development to have a detrimental impact on the amenity of those properties. 4, the amenity, outlook and access to sunlight of the balconies to units 2, 3 and 4 is poor due to the high adjoining residential properties. And 5, the proposal is an overdevelopment.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Second was Councillor Villela. How do you wish to speak now?
In the interests of time, I just thank both the applicant and the objector for their presentations. I've looked at this. I know Mansfield very well, and as Councillor Cetus pointed out to me, we've had a number of applications of this nature in Mansfield Street, and I think both in terms of the merits of this proposal and the consistency of how we've approached those other applications, I can't support what's been proposed. I believe it is not in keeping with the neighbourhood character. It is excessive for the site, something that is more moderate and more respective of the surrounds, but also the adjoining properties. I would have been willing to consider, but on this one I can't support what is proposed at this point.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCarthy. Second, wish to add anything?
Just that I welcome the comprehensive alternative motion, Mr Mayor. I think it covers all the points of concern that I have.
Thank you very much.
I'd just like to suggest a possible amendment, a further amendment to the alternate motion, that it does not meet the parking provisions because it lacks one.
Is it a car parking?
Yep, so that would be point 6. So if I'm correct in understanding Councillor Greco's additional point that insufficient car parking is provided as part of the application.
55.3 parking allocation.
I just would take advice from officers if there's any more specific words that they would recommend in relation to capturing that point, but I'm happy to accept the merits of it.
Yep, they're fine.
Yep.
Okay. There's no further debate or comment. I'll just Councillor Cetus.
One quick one. The issue here is also which side of Mansfield Street you're talking about.
Yes.
I mean, you might have had perhaps a stronger shout with these things, approximate location of the high street, but not down this end.
Yep.
And I think that's where we've got to get our vision as to where we envisage these densifications occurring. I've highlighted previously, Mr Mayor, that we've got potential development creep on our hands.
Are you speaking for or against the
I'm supporting, yep, but I'm just sort of putting in the cautionary tale. We should not just merely just rubber stamp these ones just because they present themselves in the manner that they are. It's manifestly an overdevelopment of the site. I can't envisage, for instance, that you might improve internal amenity by increasing the balcony space to compensate for the poor secluded private open space. I think that tells the same story.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes the debate and comments. I'll now put that to a vote. All those in favour of the alternative recommendation, please raise your hands. Those against? Carried. Council decided to refuse that application a permit will not be granted. All parties will be notified of council's decision. Applicant will be given 60 days of appeal to go to VCAT to challenge council's decision. All objectors will be notified of council's decision as well. They don't need to do anything. Next item of consideration is 5.8, application for 4 Straddle Street, Thornbury. Over to the officers.
Keep track.
Thank you, John. Darren soldiered on tonight and done a wonderful job.
Thanks, councillors. This is another medium density development, this time involving 6 double-storey dwellings. Each dwelling has 3 bedrooms. Each dwelling has access to a ground living area and ground north-facing courtyard. Uniquely, they also all have access to roof terrace which faces the city. So uniquely, you've got all 3 bedrooms. 18 objections against the proposal. There's a reduction in the car parking of just 1 visitor car parking space, 6 dwellings. But overall, the dwelling achieves a very high level of compliance with the planning approach. The setbacks at the upper level are well beyond Res Code. The separation between the upper levels of the 3 pairs of 2 upper level sections are separated by 9 metres. Overlooking is one of the few areas of compliance, and that is dealt with via a planning permit condition. An existing large palm tree located in the front setback is committed to be retained by the applicant, and again that has been secured by planning permit conditions. In terms of the style of development, the area is predominantly post-war pitch roof columns. The development responds to that in the way that the plan scheme requires with an innovative response, and that response involves the development being constructed entirely in brick, which is very unique. Dwelling 1 facing the street offers an interpretive response to that style or era of development with a brick facade, pitch roof form, upper level setback, projecting bay window balcony to the upper level. That's probably about all I can probably say.
Size of the block. The size of the block. The size of the block. Thank you for that. We now have a speaker. Is that right, Darren?
Tim Riley on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Tim, if you can take that. Thank you for being patient. Your last one on tonight, so you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I will be quick. I'm here to specifically our application and ask councillors to support the planning department recommendation. I just wanted to talk about 3 things. Just with the applicant, I think that's relative situation as in design itself and the response. So I'm representing Straddle Street Collective, so we're with the 6 partners that currently own this property, and half of the partners are owner-occupiers and the other half are long-term investors. The same model of development used to be supported the collaborative development model that we're adopting, we did this from the traditional speculative development and partnership project, but also the owners and using so our objective is commercial reality that obviously important and social performance. Also that makes the partners who will deliver our whole performance outcome. And each partner will do everything to somewhat no-go allows us to put that response on what is potential market failure and provide more affordable design. We do know that a speculative developer motivated cash flow to financial return may have sort of high density spend on the property inside the project for 12 years. I think this is the site coverage we have is 42% as opposed to the 60%. In terms of the design, intent and the name of the character, the council's like character statement, we sort of design buildings that contribute probably using the street state through the use of the energy architectural response and the street. We have taken particular cues and inspiration on the old material items and as well as the mid-century warehouses around Anderson Road, in particular the NFP workshop. And we think that this is we hope to see this in design plans and the developments we support we've also maintained general on setback and retained the date arms and gardening and existing parish of the street. Our foliage and considering many some sites. Which has been achieved by respecting the parish and so this is in terms of amenity, collective born dwellings with ground floor living, seems indoor outdoor integration, generous facing public open space, and to be able to take advantage of the download electricity. I think it's designed to provide significantly more private open space than the standard landed utility, and Cameron parking. The residents, some of the residents don't have 2 cars, and so the moment is that we have to make a single garage at the front space at the rear, so those residents can enjoy rather than use that.
30 seconds.
Second up, in terms of the community response, Jolene's mentioned objections, given that 30 members' objections were about area, and we feel that 5 objections from the witnesses indication
Thank you very much, Tim. You can resume your seat in the gallery. Over to councillors. Councillor McCarthy.
I just if I can get some clarity from our officers, just in the section, so the clause 55 assessment, it says here there's a site coverage of 61.8%. Is that correct? 61.8. Yeah. So I'm just wondering. It's not a make or breaker for me, but why it's got a yes for compliance when I would have thought that that should be a no for compliance on that.
So that's correct. Yeah.
Yep. That's a typo.
So 61.8% for the exercise, so close to about 60%, and still with over 20% permeability, it's still perfectly subjective.
Okay, so just I suppose it's just from a councillor perspective, in looking at this table, I had a double take on that. I would just ask that we are consistent in saying if we're going to put if we've got more than 60% site coverage, that should have a no against the. I think it would be the standard actually. In that case, it might be a yes on the objective, but it's a no on the standard. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we're consistent here because it's the first time I've had a concern about how something's been ranked in that way. But look, I would be happy to support this and happy to move the recommendation, but I just think we need to be really clear in our reports about being accurate in those
Any questions
representations.
before?
Happy to second.
Councillor Cetus, question.
Just in terms of
What have we done?
Sorry, this is weird. What Jolene was referring to is the permeability, which is 60% of site coverage. Mr. Ryan is absolutely
That's what I thought. 42%.
Well under.
Okay, could we ask that that any reports are amended and corrected, put in public, because I think that was my understanding from the applicant's presentation. So hence the question there. Yep. But I'm happy to move the recommendation. But I think
We've got a question from Councillor Steers.
Just a quick one, if I can, through you, Mr Mayor. I like the designs and everything, but I'm a little bit concerned, it's a bit of a curio. If you look at the diagrams towards the back of your A3 papers, whilst it indicates that everything is okay with respect to the shadow casts associated with that, I know that the topography that we're dealing with slopes down. So my question then is in terms of overlooking those properties, because notwithstanding our standard performance objectives, we know them very well, what level of comfort do the people associated with Unit 2.2, I know 2A has been signed, and also 20, or is that 2B, rather? What level of comfort do they have? Because, I would have thought perhaps it would have been incumbent on the designer to present a 3D dimensional impact on how that might look down the slope. Because I can tell you now, no matter how much recessing, perhaps, I don't think they're going to get much comfort in terms of looking down. It won't be a strain for them to look down because the landfall falls in.
It's steep.
I note also, Mr Mayor, that the designs themselves, fantastic in their contemporary arrangement, also indicates the point that I'm trying to make. If you notice, the units towards the back actually slant down. So you've got two benefits of looking over into the neighbouring property. You're down and you're up. So you're not from a high vantage point in order to look into someone's backyard. So I'm just wanting to get some sense, was there some kind of presentation to our officers in terms of how that might impact? Because if I accept these last three, there is no impact and I should be comforted, but I'm just concerned in terms of overlooking. In this one, beyond the standard objections that we receive, is actually a material one, I would have thought, given the topography.
Question, I guess, in terms of overlooking, we're probably looking at units 5 and 6 and perhaps number 4 in relation to the neighbouring properties to the south. But if you're looking at the elevation, you'll note that they've actually probably come up with a really unusual design in the sense that the overlooking horizontal battens, they're probably about 1.5 metres away from the actual window, and they're actually covering the entire height of the window, not just at 1.7. We're actually going up from the bottom all the way, so it's probably in excess of what you typically provide for overlooking. The only condition on the overlooking is just to confirm that the gaps between those horizontal battens are actually no more than 25%, but their actual extent of them is more than we ever see on a typical situation.
But in essence, Mr Mayor, if I can, the supplementary, the treatments in of themselves speak to the overshadowing problem, hence the condition.
The overshadowing?
No, the overlooking. I mean, I accept it.
It's only an annexation that I need to say this is no more than 25%
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. I think that's been answered. We have a mover there. Councillor McCarthy moved.
Yeah, I'm happy to move.
And seconder?
Yeah, and Councillor Lawrence.
Councillor Lawrence. Councillor McCarthy.
And I would just say, look, I'm very familiar with the street. I've once lived there many years ago now, and very familiar with the topography. And I think this is a key thing. I'm actually pleased with the sensitivity that's come into play in thinking about the siting of the buildings, the low site coverage in comparison to what would have been possible, and the model of development here, which I think is interesting and should be encouraged in terms of achieving a medium density type outcome that sits within a context that is quite unique, because there is the interface in the next street, in Anderson Street, with industrial and traditional sort of manufacturing workshops and the like, and then the residential interface. And it's a tricky space, as councillors will be aware, because we have a number of businesses that operate quite late. So I think we're conscious that the type of development has to be sympathetic to that mixed use. I'm pleased with the conditions proposed, and I congratulate the officers and the applicant on trying to find a way to deal with the various issues that would arise naturally. And I think that This might give some pointers as to other sorts of developments we might see in that pocket, given the unusual sites and that are available there, that achieve a better housing outcome for a greater range of people. So on that basis, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you for that, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lyons, anything to add?
Oh, no, nothing to add.
There's no further comment or debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Council has decided to issue a notice of decision, technically a permit for that application. All objectors will be notified of council decision, have 21 days of appeal rights to go to VCAT, should they choose to do so. Thank you very much. We've now completed our consideration reports. We now go to other business, item 6.1. We have Councillor Lee move at 6.1, second Councillor Greco. There's no comment or debate. I'll put that to a question from Councillor Villar.
Just a question through you to the officers, if I may. It's on page...
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, it's October 2015. Planning decisions before VCAT. Just some clarification what it means. It's in relation to 9 Rosenthal Crescent in Reservoir. It said following the council decision was set aside, the permit was granted. But following the lodgement of the amended plans that address council's concern, council changed its position from one of refusal to one of support. So therefore, did it actually get to VCAT because there were amended plans? Was that? Are you familiar with that one? Sorry.
So it came back to us.
So it came back here,
Yep.
and then we supported it. And so, okay, cool. Just
Thank you, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
There's no further questions. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor. That concludes tonight's meeting. Don't forget we've got briefing tomorrow afternoon, 5:30.